असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्माम् अमृतं गमय। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। Let us now pray together. We offer our salutations to the all-loving being who endows all beings with consciousness. We meditate on the Lord, who is the origin of the universe. Lord, thou abidest in all, thou art all, thou assumest all forms. Thou art the origin and goal of all. Thou art the self of all. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss. Salutations unto thee. May the world be peaceful. May the wicked become gentle. May all creatures think of mutual welfare. May their minds be occupied with what is spiritual and abiding. May our hearts be immersed in selfless love for the Lord. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Today we are observing the birth anniversary of Sri Ramakrishna, from morning with devotional chanting, then there was the ritual of worship, food offerings, and then there was a video, and now it is time to think on the great message given to this world by Sri Ramakrishna through his teachings in words as well as living the life. So we have some very good speakers, teachers who have practiced these teachings for a long time. They will be speaking to us about what they understood, how they look upon Sri Ramakrishna, what is the message that we should take from that. The first to speak in front of us today is Mrs. Sunita Dhar. She has been initiated into the order for many decades and has been practicing the teachings. She also has the distinction of teaching the students at a great institution, rather the unique institution in United States called Vivekananda Vidyapith, where the children learn of this great ideal, and thus she spreads this message to the younger generation very well. So although very busy, she accepted my request to come and speak before us. So Sunita, please. Huh? Oh yes, openings, you have another 3-4 minutes. Okay. Yes, thank you, Charlie. Yeah, I was getting mixed up a bit, yeah. So it is, she is first amongst the speakers, but before that there is a wonderful opening song, a hymn composed by Swami Abhedananda on Sri Ramakrishna. Swami Abhedananda, as you know, has spent about 20-25 years in America, and this and many other great hymns he composed at a very young age. They are full of literary flair, but more importantly, they bring out this divine human nature of Sri Ramakrishna, his God, and in the human form. So let us join in singing this song, which has a very nice tune too.
Ram तत्त्वं न हि दैशिकेन्द्रं स्वरूपं किमु भावजातं हे रामकृष्ण त्वयि भक्तिहीने कृपाकटाक्षं गुरुदेव नित्यं हे रामकृष्ण हे रामकृष्ण हे रामकृष्ण.
Thank you. Very nice rendering of this beautiful hymn. And now I request Sunita to begin her presentation, her nice talk.
Pranam Swamiji. Namaste everyone. As Swamiji mentioned, I do interact with young students a lot, so my thought process kind of stays at that level. So if what I'm going to present comes across as Vedanta very light, please forgive me for that. I would ask you to imagine a child going with his father to see the king. They reach the palace gate and there a guard is standing with this bright, crisp uniform. And the child is very impressed and he asks his father, "Is that the king?" And the father says, "No." So they move further and there's another chamber and another guard is standing there. And the child asks again, "Is that the king?" And the father says, "No." And finally, they reach the inner chamber. And there, the king is seated on a throne in his full majesty. With his grandeur, the child doesn't need to ask. He knows that is the king. Now imagine a small village in India where a bunch of young women have gathered. One of their friends has been recently married and they're curious to see her husband. So they're peeking through a window and looking at the men who are sitting out there in the drawing room. And they point at one and ask the friend, "Is that your husband?" And she says, "No." They point to another one and they ask, "Is that your husband?" "No." And in this way, they cover the whole room. And finally, when they point to the last person in the room, the friend just smiles. She doesn't need to say anything. Now, these are not scenes from some movie. This is Sri Ramakrishna explaining the path of Jnana Yoga, Neti Neti, where through discrimination, one realizes that nothing except God is real or permanent. But he explains it in such a way that it's easy for a common man to understand. Like an artist, he draws this imagery with his words and makes these complex concepts come alive in a way that leaves a permanent mark on our minds. As we go through the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, on every page, we find him telling simple stories, giving examples of birds and fish and frogs and tigers and snakes and rice fields and dark clouds and oceans and city folks and farmers and fisherwomen and eggplant sellers, and the list goes on. Being one with everything around him, he saw the truth shining through everything and presented it to us in these beautiful, simple, yet profound stories. So that is what I would like to talk about today, Sri Ramakrishna, the storyteller. But before I do that, I would like to digress for a minute and ask you to imagine one more time Sri Ramakrishna having a Twitter account. Twitter forces one to be concise, and we'll see that Sri Ramakrishna had this amazing ability to get his message across using minimum words. So for example, he may tweet in Bengali, of course, and please excuse my terrible Bengali. So he may tweet, Manav Jive Ishwar Lav, just 4 words, and he managed to pack the essence of all the scriptures in these 4 words, that the goal of human life is God realization. So you like the tweet, and you ask, how do we realize God? Pray to Mother, he responds. But I'm a student, I live in a dorm, I cannot pray there. Or I have a tiny apartment, or there is no temple nearby. Where do I go to pray? Mone, kone, bone, he says. If you can, find a quiet place in a park, in woods nearby, and pray. Or sit in a small corner of your room. Or if nothing else is possible, make a shrine in your heart, and there worship the Lord. Okay, but which God should I worship? And he responds with another tweet that gets the most likes. Jatomat, tatopat. As many beliefs, so many paths. Whichever form of God appeals to you, pick that and start the journey. It will lead you to the destination because all paths lead to the same goal. But does God really have a form, or is he formless? Thakur smiles at this often repeated question, and then he responds, are water and ice really different? He has a point. It is the same water that may take the form of a glacier or an ice cube, or be just formless like an immense ocean. Okay, I understand that. But I have a very busy life, a family to take care of, studying to do, long work hours. Where is the time to think of God? And this is where we see the magic that Thakur creates with his stories. He tells us about this village woman who sells flattened rice. With one hand, she's turning the rice in the mortar, avoiding the pestle that's constantly pounding the rice. With the other hand, she's holding and nursing her baby. And at the same time, she's dealing with the customers, bargaining with one and reminding another one that he owes her money. Thakur calls it the yoga practice. 15 parts of her mind out of 16 are fixed on that machine, making sure that her hand doesn't get caught in it, while she does all other things with just 1/16 of her mind. That is how one must think of God in the midst of all their activities. Thakur says, do your household duties with one hand while holding on to God with the other. And when your duties are done, hold God with both the hands. He introduces us to the maid who lives in her master's house. She takes care of his children as if they are her own, even calls them as her own children. But deep in her heart, she knows they do not belong to her, and her real home is back in the village. So if we are spiritual seekers, then that maid is our role model. We must love our family, take care of their needs, but know that they do not belong to us. And therefore, like the maid, just do our duty. We also get to meet the sannyasi who tried to intervene when he saw a poor man getting abused by a landlord. As they say, no good deed ever goes unpunished. So naturally, the sannyasi got beat up by the landlord in the process. So his brother monks came, took him back to the ashram, nursed him, gave him some milk to drink. And then just to check on his mental state, they asked him, "Who is giving you milk?" And the sannyasi says, "He who beat me earlier is now giving me milk." Can we get to that state where we see the same God in everyone and be able to love all equally? And you may be thinking, yeah, these sound great, but these things are not easy to do. Real life is tough. What about that school bully or the terrible boss at work? Are we supposed to love them too? Well, Thakur was expecting that. That's why he brings in the tiger god. He says, no doubt there's God in the tiger as well, but you don't need to go and hug him. Do pranam to him from a safe distance. Not only that, he also teaches us to use our power of discrimination and learn to hiss. In case you don't know what hissing is like, let's meet the angry, venomous snake that had terrorized an entire village. As a sadhu was passing by, the village boys warned him about the snake. But the sadhu had powers, and using that, he tamed the snake. Not just that, he also taught him to love and not hate, gave him a mantra to repeat, and promised to check on him after some time. Such was the transformation in the snake that the emboldened village boys eventually got hold of him and beat him to a pulp. Finding him in that state, the guru scolds the snake. I told you not to bite. I did not say don't hiss. So being a spiritual seeker should not turn us into doormats. We should have respect for ourselves and stand up for what is right. And that brings us to the farmer, the one who is working to get his fields ready for the harvest. The wife sends multiple messages to take a break and eat something, but the farmer is intent on getting the job done. And finally, she herself comes and reminds him that he must eat something. And the farmer yells at her and drives her out. By the evening, however, his work is done, and then he sits to enjoy his meal, content with the knowledge that his fields are ready. Like that farmer, we too must always be vigilant and guard the time we have set aside for our spiritual practices. Otherwise, that time will get easily eaten up by other distractions. And if we are serious about spirituality, who we associate with also matters. Sri Ramakrishna tells us about the fisherwoman who is visiting her friend. The friend is a flower seller. In the night, the fisherwoman is tossing and turning in bed, not able to sleep, because the fragrance of flowers in the room is bothering her. She's used to smelling fish. Finally, she brings in her fish basket, sprinkles some water on it, and keeps it near her bed. The smell of fish immediately puts her to sleep. So what do we prefer? Fragrant flowers or smelly fish? We must choose our company carefully and surround ourselves with people who will uplift us, inspire us, and be a positive rather than a negative influence in our lives. But no matter how hard we try, there are days when we feel lost, We don't know what to do, which way to go. And then we hear this sound, as if someone is pecking on the window. And there it is, the bird that sat on the mast of a big boat, without realizing that the boat had left the harbor and was deep into the ocean. I tried flying in all directions but could not find a way to get back to land, the bird tells us. So do the best you can and then learn to surrender like I did. Surrender, Sri Ramakrishna says, means being like that kitten which is happy with whatever its mother does with it. She may put it on the kitchen floor or on the master's bed. Can we be like that? We are so quick to blame God the moment things don't go according to our wishes. So surrender is not easy and can also sometimes become a pious cover for our laziness. Sri Ramakrishna therefore cautions us that surrender requires tremendous faith, the kind of faith shown by Vibhishana when he tied something to a man's cloth and assured him that with its power he could walk on water. And the man was able to do so until, overcome by curiosity, he opened the knot and found just a leaf with Lord Rama's name on it. Is that it? He thought. And the moment this doubt came in his mind, he drowned. Now, who wouldn't want to walk on water? But do we have that kind of faith? Remember Thakur's tweet? Pray to Mother. Thakur says one must pray to God without any selfish desire. But even selfish desire, if practiced with perseverance, is gradually turned into selfless worship. Like Dhruva, who practiced tapasya to get a kingdom. But at the end he realized God. And he said, why should a man give up gold if he gets it while searching for glass beads? So what exactly should we pray for? Thakur says God is a wish-fulfilling tree. He may grant our wishes, but do we know if that wish is actually good for us? To illustrate that, he introduces us to this traveler who has stopped under a tree for some rest. His stomach is growling, so he wishes he had something to eat. And voila, a feast appeared magically. This is great, he thinks. I will eat and then take a nap. And guess what? A bed appeared because he had been sitting under a wish-fulfilling tree. What if a tiger appears as I sleep, was his next thought. And you don't need me to tell you what happened. So as spiritual seekers, let's pray only for knowledge and devotion and have faith that God knows what is good for us. He will give it to us at the right time, and He will also give us the wisdom to understand why. If we are fortunate, this wisdom may come to us through our Guru, who will remove the doubts and show the way. We may recall another one of Thakur's favorite characters, the lion, who believed he was like the sheep that he grew up with, until another lion came and showed him who he truly was. We go through our lives being just like that ignorant lion, not knowing that our real nature is divine. If, however, God's grace is there, our Guru can guide us in the right direction. So Thakur says, pray, have faith, and at the right time, guidance will come. When we hear such words, we feel reassured. I would like to end with one of Thakur's most inspiring stories, Go Forward. Here we meet a woodcutter who was told by a sannyasi to go forward. After thinking about what the sannyasi meant, the woodcutter one day went deeper into the forest and came across sandalwood trees. So he made more money, but he did not stop there. The sannyasi had said, go forward. So he went further and came across silver mines, and then gold and diamond mines, and so on. The deeper he went, bigger was his gain. We need to follow that woodcutter's example and keep trying, keep going forward. Just as thousands of years of darkness in a room can vanish in a moment if one brings in light, so, says Thakur, at any moment, God's grace can remove our ignorance, destroy our bondages, and set us free. And this brings me to one final tweet for today from Sri Ramakrishna. Bhagavat, Bhakt, Bhagwan. Scriptures, devotees, and God are the same. So my pranam to all. Thank you.
Many thanks, dear Sunita. I started envying the children who are her students. I should be one of them. How beautifully she illustrated that how Sri Ramakrishna, in some very brief sentences, imparted great truths. Sunita ji, thank you very much for bringing out that feature and how to read the tweets of Sri Ramakrishna. Great, it was a very nice exposition. Now I request Chris Sparks to speak, give his talk. Chris Sparks has been coming here for a long time now. How many years, Chris? About 15? 2006, see. 16 years. So, and he has been a student of philosophy, literature, and his mindset is deeply philosophical. So we need not expect the same way that Sunita told, a different flavor. So we need different flavors, Same thing would make us feel bored. So please.
Dear Swamiji, friends, recently while reading Swami Chaitananandaji's beautiful biography on Mahendranath Gupta with our Saturday reading group, I was struck by a passage regarding M and the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Journalist N. Bangaria wrote in his reminiscences of M the following: I became fully convinced that it's impossible for anybody to add to the charm of Ramakrishna. M spoke beautifully, but there was a distinct and ineffaceable barrier between the two styles. The style of the master, as the disciple recorded, and the style of the disciple himself. The originality, suggestiveness, simplicity, and directness of the former are all its own. It soars far above the reach of any human intellect, be it ever so great. It is not possible for anyone to have invented for the world the Ramakrishna art. It is greatness enough to have preserved it. Now, this phrase, the Ramakrishna art, what a wonderful idea. It is not possible for anyone to have invented for the world the Ramakrishna art. So, what could be meant by this phrase? In a narrow sense, the journalist refers directly to the beauty, naturalness, uniqueness, and sweetness of Sri Ramakrishna's oratory style. But more broadly, the Ramakrishna art may refer to the beauty of what Sri Ramakrishna manifested and created by his presence as a fully realized human being on earth. Ramakrishna was many things: a religious teacher, a loving son, a monastic, a temple priest, a husband, an avatar. He was also an artist. During his childhood, Sri Ramakrishna, then known as Gadadhar, was both a painter and sculptor. Swami Sardananda writes the following in his biography, Sri Ramakrishna in his Divine Play. Gadadhar made fair progress in school. Within a short period, he was able to read and write, but his aversion for arithmetic remained. Day by day, his ability to imitate others and his ingenuity extended to many new areas. Gadadhar began to visit the village sculptors and watch them make the images of gods and goddesses. He learned their art of molding and started to practice it at home. This became one of his hobbies. Similarly, he met painters and he began to paint pictures like they did. Whenever there was any exposition on the Puranas or Yatra performance in the village, he attended and learned the myths of the Puranas. He also carefully observed the type of presentation that most appealed to the audience. His extraordinary memory and intelligence helped him in these pursuits. Here we get an inkling of Sri Ramakrishna's appreciation and aptitude for numerous arts, including painting, music, storytelling, drama, and sculpture. Sri Ramakrishna would later teach his disciples, "I cast the mold. You put your mind into it and shape yourselves accordingly." It is a wonderful meditation to juxtapose the image of the child Sri Ramakrishna fashioning out of clay gods and goddesses, and Sri Ramakrishna, the Guru, molding the lives of his young disciples, many of whom would go on to be world teachers. While Sri Ramakrishna was a priest at the temple of Dakshineshwar, an image of Govinda broke. Rani Rasmani, the founder of the temple, and Mathur, her son-in-law, consulted the Pandits of Kolkata, who advised that the broken image must be immersed in the Ganges and a new one should be installed in its place. Mathur then decided to consult the junior priest, Sri Ramakrishna, who replied in an ecstatic mood, "If any one of the Rani's son-in-law were to break a leg, would she forsake him and put someone else in his place? Wouldn't she rather have him treated by a doctor? Let it be the same in this case. Mend the image and worship it as before. Why should the image be discarded?" Mathur was aware that the master had the skill needed to repair the image, so he asked him to do so. The master accordingly glued the broken part of the right foot back onto the image. He repaired it so skillfully that even now it is hard to believe that the image had ever been broken, even if one examines it carefully. So, not only was Sri Ramakrishna a gifted sculptor, we could say he was an art conservator. The Govinda image remains installed in the Radha Govinda temple at the temple of Dakshineshwar to this day. It's wonderful to see that image, thinking of the manner in which Sri Ramakrishna tenderly mended, painted, and restored it. The ideal artist possesses an openness toward experiencing that which is beautiful, with all one's heart, soul, and might. At a very young age, Sri Ramakrishna demonstrated a heightened openness and receptivity to the aesthetic beauty which surrounded him, be it of nature, music, poetry. This, combined with the purity and one-pointedness of his mind, led to his first experience of samadhi. Swami Yogeshananda recounts the incident in his book, The Visions of Ramakrishna. A very young boy, Gadadhar Chatterjee, was walking on the high bulk of a rice field near his village home in Bengal. Little did he know that he was about to experience samadhi, God consciousness, the state which was to become his natural habitat in maturity. The boy's exact age is difficult to know, for Sri Ramakrishna, as he was later known, once said he was 6 or 7, whereas it is recorded in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna that he was 10 or 11. It was on the morning of a day in June or July before the monsoon season. As was the custom in villages like Kamarpukur, the boy had taken with him for refreshment parched rice in a small basket, from which he had begun to eat. A large black rain cloud began to roll and gather until it had suddenly filled the entire horizon. Across this black cloud suddenly flew a flock of white cranes. The beauty of this contrast was overpowering to the sensitive nature of the boy, and down he fell, absorbed in an extraordinary mood, scattering his rice grains to the ground. Later he came to know from others that he had been unconscious and his body motionless. There are certain characteristics of God vision, he once said about it. One sees light, feels joy, and experiences the upsurge of a great current in one's chest, like the bursting of a rocket. Near the end of his life, the master told those around him, "Since that day, I've been an altogether different man. I began to see another person within me." We cannot fathom the mind of Sri Ramakrishna at that time. What did he see while gazing at the dark clouds and pure white cranes? The imagery evokes the richness of a highly developed painting, the expansiveness of the sky and rice fields, the churning of the clouds, the dynamic shifts from light to dark, the gracefulness of the soaring cranes. Each image is ripe with symbolism and spiritual connotations. Perhaps the stark contrast brought to mind the dualities of life, happiness and misery, freedom and bondage, life and death. Swami Yogeshananda further explains, this first ecstasy brings to our mind the interesting question of the relation between the aesthetic experiences and mystical ones. While on the one hand, it indicates the power of man's emotional nature to stimulate and participate in the divine beatitude, on the other hand, in its quality and its depth, it is an eye-opener to shallow romanticism, which may be prone to see immortality in every passing tear shed in the name of beauty. Swami Yogeshananda does not deny that Sri Ramakrishna's first ecstasy possesses an aesthetic dimension, but he reminds us that the real beauty of the scene lies in Ramakrishna's experience of the transcendent, that is to say, his vision and experience of the divine. Sri Ramakrishna tasted the bliss of samadhi in various ways throughout his life. Likewise, he utilized various arts, poetry, music, storytelling, dance, drama, as a means of sadhana and to share his love of God with others. Swami Sardananda describes Sri Ramakrishna's singing in Sri Ramakrishna's divine play. Ramakrishna would frequently sing devotional songs and become absorbed in the Divine Mother. The divine play reads, after Ram Kumar passed away, Sri Ramakrishna intensely yearned for the vision of the Divine Mother. At that time, after the temple worship was over, he used to sit before the Divine Mother and became absorbed in her. With overwhelming emotion, he used to sing devotional songs of devotees like Ram Prasad, Kamalakanta, and others. The hearts of all who witnessed Sri Ramakrishna's singing were touched. Swami Sardananda further describes how sweetly the Master sang and how passionate was his heart. Whoever heard those songs even once could never forget them. There was no pretense in his singing, no attempt to parade his skill as do some classical musicians. He would fully absorb the theme of the song and then express it with his impressive yet sweet voice, using the correct musical tempo and cadence. Whoever heard the Master's songs realized that emotion is the very life of music. When the master's singing was compared with that of others, it became clear that mood cannot express itself if the tempo and cadence are not perfect. As Ramakrishna sang, he would become so absorbed in the mood of the song that he would completely forget that he was singing to please anyone else. We have never in our lives seen any other person who would fully forget himself while singing in ecstasy, as the master did. Even devotional singers expect some appreciation from their audience. But as for the master, we notice that when someone praised his singing, he truly believed that the praise was due to the emotion of the song and not to himself at all. Shri said that while the master sang, tears would pour profusely from his eyes and flow down his chest. What is the Ramakrishna art? There is no pretense. There is no desire for appreciation from the audience. There is full absorption in God, as well as the sweetness and joy which accompany it. A great artist creates a masterpiece, a work of outstanding creativity, skill, and beauty. The intrinsic dynamism of the piece attracts an audience and draws them into the work. The audience does not remain unchanged. Great art transforms. Swami Vivekananda explains that only those with trained eyes can understand and appreciate art. He says, "When I began to listen to the music with attention and study it minutely, I came more and more to understand it, and I was lost in admiration. Such is the case with every art. In glancing at a highly finished painting, we cannot understand where its beauty lies. Moreover, unless the eye is to a certain extent trained, one cannot appreciate the subtle touches and blendings, the inner genius of a work of art." Sri Ramakrishna's divine play is before us as a highly finished painting. Can we understand where its beauty lies? What is required is training, sustained spiritual practice to develop the eyes to see and the ears to hear. Then we will be able to fully appreciate the Ramakrishna art. Swami Vivekananda said to a disciple on the birthday celebration of Sri Ramakrishna, 1902, at Bellore, "Blessed are those who have seen Ramakrishna. All of you, too, will get his vision. When you have come here, you are very near to him. Nobody has been able to understand him who came to earth as Sri Ramakrishna. Even his own nearest devotees have no real clue of it. Only some have an inkling of it. All will understand in time." Thank you, friends.
Thank you, dear Chris. What a beautiful presentation of Sri Ramakrishna art that was given. Skill is one thing. Of course, the artist has to have skill. But this skill becomes art and more advanced art as it starts revealing some inner truth that is not visible on the surface. Then it becomes art. And the deeper truth it discovers and presents in a more touching way, it becomes more valuable art. Sri Ramakrishna, very skillful artist. Swami Vivekananda described, while Chris has told some wonderful quotes from Vivekananda about Sri Ramakrishna art, I will tell one more. That he says that here is this great sculptor, the artist, who would take our clay, simple clay of our mind, which as such looks just lump of clay, ugly, but would shape it, uh, squeeze it at various points, scrape it, pat it, and it starts looking like God. All of us are divine, and it is a sculptor, an artist like Sri Ramakrishna who brings that art that to make us experience our inner divinity. Thank you very much, Chris, for this beautiful discourse. Now the last speaker of this is our friend Eze, not been coming here for so many decades or such things, but he is a very keen student, wonderful observer, and a deep thinker and worker, a meditator. And we were charmed, to hear his speech on Sri Ramakrishna's birthday in 2021. So I requested him to be the speaker this year too, and he has very kindly accepted. Thank you, dear Eze. So please come forward.
Here is a thought experiment. Swami Vivekananda says, Sri Ramakrishna is the embodiment of infinite spiritual ideas capable of development in infinite ways. If we carefully reflect on the sayings and teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, we find that they contain an endless stream of meaning. We find that one teaching has countless applications and implications. Let us try to explore this idea. Let us take one teaching and try to catch a glimpse of its vastness. Sri Ramakrishna says, Brahman and Shakti are one, like fire and heat, like milk and whiteness. Let us try to examine the limitless dimension of this teaching through a series of questions, ranging from cosmology to ethics to Vedanta philosophy to yoga psychology. First question, how and why is this universe existing? Brahman is pure consciousness. Shakti is cosmic will, and they are one. Pure consciousness and cosmic will belong to the same order of reality, like fire and heat. And this apparent universe is the manifestation of cosmic will. And just like pure consciousness, which is without beginning and without end, the procession of universes is also beginningless and endless. The universe is not a singular appearance. It is an eternal cycle. Like a seed that grows into a vast tree, it persists for billions of years, but gradually decays and dies. But it leaves behind a new seed for a new universe. Sri Ramakrishna says, the primal energy is ever at play. She is creating, preserving, and destroying. This power is called Kali. Kali is verily Brahman. Second question. Why is there evil in the world? Brahman is absolute existence. Shakti is the conditioned existence, and they are one. Absolute existence is not subject to any conditions, but its quality of isness, of being an eternal substance, forms the basis for the appearance of conditioned existences. So, what are the conditions through which the world appears? The pairs of opposites, light and darkness, attraction and repulsion, expansion and contraction. This world appears through contrast. We only know light because there is darkness. We can only think of space because there are boundaries. And we can only recognize good because there is evil. Sri Ramakrishna demonstrates the ideal of serene indifference to the many evils of life. He says, let the afflictions and the body take care of themselves. O my mind, you dwell in bliss. Third question. What is love? Brahman is infinite oneness. Shakti is the expression of oneness, and they are one. Love is oneness, and the expression of oneness is love. As such, love is the only force in the universe, but it has different degrees of expression, degrees of expansion and contraction. When love is very contracted, it becomes a distorted self-love, a love for your own body and a small group of bodies and special objects. And that love is separated from others. So there is a space between my self-love and that which is not loved. If the space is big, then we have fear, lust, greed, jealousy, and so on. If the space is small, we have compassion, contentment, forbearance, goodwill, and so on. So there is a continuous line from the small love of a selfish rascal to the bigger love of a compassionate saint, to the infinite love that is Sri Ramakrishna. Swami Vivekananda spoke of how Sri Ramakrishna, in the late hours, would pray with such intensity, with profuse tears and anguish of heart, that he might return to earth again, even as a dog, if only he might aid a single soul. Can we fathom the depth of his compassion, the broadness of his sympathy? That is the infinite heart of love. Fourth question. What is devotion? Brahman is the one reality. Shakti is the play of its shadow forms, and they are one, like a salt doll and the vast ocean. The Shakti of ignorance originates the salt doll and controls it through the faculty of I and mind. The salt doll gathers bittersweet experiences, but a time comes when the one reality begins to pull on its shadow form. The Shakti of knowledge grabs the salt dog, injects it with the name of God, and drags it to the ocean of bliss. And that pull of the innermost reality, that attractive power of God, when that inward force is reflected in the mind, that is devotion. Sri Ramakrishna said to M, "You are of the same essence as I am, as father and son. So long as you did not come here, you remained self-forgotten. Now you will know yourself." Fifth question. What is ignorance, knowledge, and supreme knowledge? Brahman is the rope. Shakti is the snake. And they are one. To see the snake and tremble with great fear is the state of ignorance. To gather courage and carefully analyze the snake eventually vanishes in a flash, and the underlying rope is revealed. All fear is gone forever. This is knowledge. But to see that the rope and the snake are one, to see how the rope is playing as the snake, is supreme knowledge. All this is verily Brahman. Sixth question. What is meditation? Brahman is beyond any relation. Shakti is the web of relationships, and they are one. To meditate with open eyes is to hold on to the truth of unrelatedness amid all relationships. Sri Ramakrishna says, "Live with them all, with wife and children, with father and mother, and serve them. Treat them as if they were very dear to you, but know in your heart of hearts they do not belong to you." To meditate with closed eyes is to completely put aside the web of relationships and remain absolutely unrelated. To hang up a sign on the door of your mind: "No trespassing on this property. Violators will be prosecuted." Latu Maharaj, the great disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, says, "I am, and my chosen ideal is. There is none else besides." This attitude purifies the mind. This is meditation. Seventh question. What is the secret of work? Brahman is without action. Shakti is the doer of action, and they are one, like milk and whiteness. Milk is the inner substance, and whiteness is the outer quality. The inner substance of work is to be the silent witness of work being done, to try to feel that you are merely an instrument of the divine controller, to offer everything to the divine. The outer quality of work is efficiency, wholehearted dedication, and skill in action. This union of inner tranquility and outer proficiency is called inaction, in action. Eighth question. What is discernment? Brahman is the ocean of nectar. Shakti is the scorching desert, and they are one. Like a man suffering from burning thirst, not knowing that an ocean of living water is within him. Swami Premananda, a great disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, says, Sri Ramakrishna would try to impress upon our young minds the emptiness and vanity of worldly enjoyments, how hot and dry the world is, like a desert. How like a mirage, it burns the heart, but never slakes the thirst. He will tell us of the great power of the all-bewitching Maya, and how man, forgetting his divine heritage, falls ever and again into her clutches. Deep down, within his heart, man knows full well that there is no lasting happiness to be found in the mad pursuit of worldly enjoyments. And yet, like the camel who chews thorny bushes, even while his mouth bleeds, so man stirs up his lust for enjoyment even while he suffers. To satisfy his lust, man needs gold, lust, and gold. These are the chains that drag a man down to the pit of worldliness. He alone soars high, who shakes himself free of these chains. Ninth question. What is the harmony of religions? Brahman is the ultimate unity. Shakti is the unity in diversity. And they are one, like water and its various names in different languages. Religion is the experience of ultimate unity. Religion is the struggle to attain unity with the ultimate principle. Religion is the diverse expressions of unitive knowledge. In theology, in mythology, in rites and rituals, there is tremendous diversity. This is the natural necessity of variation, in accordance with the varieties of temperaments and powers of understanding. No religion has been able to express the whole truth. What he is, he is. That is the final conclusion of the knowers of truth. The immense diversity in religion of old sects and new factions are all part of one infinite fact, the attainment of spiritual freedom. The unity is the struggle for growth. Growth in divine conception. Growth in character formation. Growth in spiritual unfoldment. Swami Vivekananda says, the many and the one are the same reality, seen by the same mind at different times and in different attitudes. Let me conclude with an anecdote. In his pre-monastic days, Swami Brahmesh Ananda was very devoted to Swami Vivekananda, but felt no attraction to Sri Ramakrishna. Understanding his bent of mind, Swami Bhaskareshwarananda, the head of the Nagpur monastery, said to him, "Why don't you accept Sri Ramakrishna? You accept Swami Vivekananda. What has he said about Sri Ramakrishna? That through the dust of Sri Ramakrishna's feet, hundreds of Vivekanandas can be produced. Still, you don't accept Sri Ramakrishna?" Then he added, "Sri Ramakrishna is not God. He is the Father of God." This statement, the Father of God, is not easy to understand. We need a simple explanation. Who is Sri Ramakrishna? Swami Turiyananda, a great disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, explains, "Is there anyone but the Lord in the universe? It is He alone who is manifested in different forms. Because of our ignorance, we see many things in place of Him. If one can perceive Him, one will not see diversity anymore and will not suffer. He is within everyone. He is everything. When one is established in this knowledge, one becomes free. Thank you.
What a beautiful exposition of this great statement of Sri Ramakrishna that Brahman and Shakti are one. And he put 9 great questions to ponder over that. I am very happy to hear this beautiful discourse. It needs more meditation. He also gave that very nice thing, meditation with open eyes and meditation with closed eyes. And they are one, different in their methodologies, different in their approach. Harmony of religions, they are all one, and yet they are so many. I will add just one sentence to to see how I feel about it. He made a statement that no religion contains all truth. I would say each religion, when properly followed, leads us to the all truth. It is not that no religion contains all truth. We can say it that each religion contains all truth, and again the two statements are one. So it is that it was a wonderful discussion, friends. All of you I congratulate for being present to such a great symposium, and I thank all the speakers of this wonderful afternoon, evening, and I don't need to add anything. It is, let us pray for the blessings of Sri Ramakrishna so that we can experience through his grace our inner divinity and thus go beyond all conflicts, realizing the ultimate truths. So it is, I will conclude with the closing prayers, but before that I was again forgetting, there is the closing song. So those our wonderful musical artists, 2 vocalists, Abhijit Sarkar and Sukalyan Sengupta, and a skillful harmonium player Taposh Talukdar, and equally skillful tabla player Abhijit Adak. Thank you all for presenting this elevating music today. Please, this is a song that exhorts us to recite, chant the name of Sri Ramakrishna. The name, it is a great philosophical idea that the name is distinct, indistinct. Name and the one whose name is that, they are not separate, they are one. So by using the name as the tool, you realize that reality of whose this name is. So this song tells us to therefore keep on repeating the name of Sri Ramakrishna. Come on.
सदा राम कृष्ण नाम गामना सदा राम कृष्ण नाम गामना लगा लगा लगन चरणन में मगन बना जामना लगा मगन चरणन में मगन बना जामना लगा लगन चरणन में मगन बना जामना नाम गामना सदा राम कृष्ण नाम गामना प्रभु पूर्ण काम है परम शांति धाम है शुभ कर चिर सुंदर नयनाभिराम है प्रभु पूर्ण काम है परम शांति धाम है शुभ कर चिर सुंदर नयनाभिराम है जान सत्य एकमेव वही यह जग सपना मना सत्य एकमेव वही यह जग सपना मना सत्य एकमेव वही यह जग सपना मना नाम का मना सदा राम कृष्ण नाम का मना नाथ करे मोहनाश भरे हृदय में प्रकाश हरे कर्म पाश दूर करे सकल त्रास नाथ करे मोहनाश भरे हृदय में प्रकाश हरे कर्म पाश दूर करे सकल त्रास उनकी कृपा दृष्टि मिटा दे समूल भव तृषामना कृपा दृष्टि मिटा दे समूल भव तृषामना कृपा दृष्टि मिटा दे समूल भव तृषामना नाम गामना सदा राम कृष्ण नाम गामना वही परम सुख निधान अकारण करुणावान सहज करे नत जन को परम पद प्रदान वही परम सुख निधान अकारण करुणावान सहज करे नत जन को परम पद प्रदान वही कमल चरण बना शरण तज दे भ्रम नामना कमल चरण बना शरण तज दे भ्रम नामना कमल चरण बना शरण तज दे भ्रम नामना नाम गामना सदा राम कृष्ण नाम गामना लगा लगा मगन चरणन में मगन बना जामना लगा लगन चरणन में मगन बना जामना लगा मगन चरणन में मगन बना जामना नाम गामना सदा राम कृष्ण नाम गामना सदा राम कृष्ण नाम गामना
Thank you. That was very good, inspiring piece of music, exhorting us to resort to chanting the name of Sri Ramakrishna. A quick review of the upcoming programs. There is going to be a day-long retreat later this month on 26th of March. It is Saturday, and the retreat will be given by Swami Atmajnanananda, whom most of you have heard. He is going to speak, give classes on ABC of meditation. Nice topic, isn't it? So, and next Sunday, the topic of discussion, it is matter of intuitive experience. That is the top name of the topic. So, And the Tuesday, Friday classes at 7:30 p.m. will go on as usual. On Tuesdays, topics is Sri Ramakrishna and his divine play. On Fridays, we discuss stories from Srimad Bhagavatam, daily meditations, prayers, early morning as well as evening. They continue to happen. You are welcome to attend these programs according to the times. Please refer to the flyer, and if possible, please get you the newsletter which gives the updated information. So with this, I will conclude with the closing prayers. After that, there will be Sri Ramakrishna Nama Sankirtanam, and then you are all requested to join the prasad, the supper. May the Divine, who is Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Great Spirit of the Native Americans, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-loving being manifest himself unto us and grant us abiding understanding and all-consuming divine love. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So let us begin, friends. Are you okay, Peter? Got it? सर्वजीवपापनाशकारणं भवेश्वरं स्वीकृतं च गर्भवास देहपाशमीदृशम् यापितं स्वलीलया च येन दिव्यगे
विवेकानन्दादि सच्छिष्य सुपूजिताय श्री शारदा देव्या विरतसेविताय श्री रामकृष्ण परमहंसाय अवतार वरिष्ठाय च ते नमः। परब्रह्म पराशक्ति जगद्रूप रामकृष्ण धर्मरक्षणाय जगति देहधारी रामकृष्ण परब्रह्म पराशक्ति जगद्रूप रामकृष्ण धर्मरक्षणाय जगति देहधारी रामकृष्ण जन्मपूतवङ्गदेश विप्रवंश रामकृष्ण चन्द्रमणिक्षुदिराम सौख्यदातृ रामकृष्ण शैशवेऽपि शिल्पगीत सदा निपुण रामकृष्ण पक्षिपङ्क्तिदर्शनात् समाधिमाप्त रामकृष्ण सप्तमाब्दपेप्तपेतृ प्रेम बाल रामकृष्ण बाल्य एव विरागाग्नि दह्यमान रामकृष्ण भूतभुवि ध्यानमग्न बालयोगी रामकृष्ण भिक्षुयोगी साधुसङ्ग मोदमान रामकृष्ण विशालाक्षि सद्मपथे विस्मृतात्म रामकृष्ण सूत्रधरण कालपालितत्प्रतिज्ञ रामकृष्ण धनी दत्त भिक्षयाति तुष्यमाण रामकृष्ण सूर्यसभाराजमान भालसूर्य रामकृष्ण शैवरात्रिनाटके शिवायमान रामकृष्ण श्रीनिवासवलयकार पूजिताङ्घ्रि रामकृष्ण सदा भक्तिगीतदेव पूजनरत रामकृष्ण कृष्ण रागयुक्त साधिकाय मान रामकृष्ण लोकशिक्षणं विहाय मोक्षकाम रामकृष्ण दक्षिणेश कालिकादि निरादि निरत रामकृष्ण भक्तिहीन रासमणिं ताडितवन रामकृष्ण जगन्मातृदर्शनाय रोरुवन् हि रामकृष्ण आत्महनन समय दत्त मातृदृष्टि रामकृष्ण सर्वकाल जगन्मातृ दृष्टि भरित रामकृष्ण शिवोन्माद निरासाय कृतोद्वाह रामकृष्ण विवाहे कृते पितवा चलं मनो रामकृष्ण भैरवेय पादतले शिष्यभूत साधनेन सिद्धिमाप्त रामकृष्ण भक्तिमग्न चित्तयुक्त परम भक्त रामकृष्ण राम भक्ति विस्मृतात्म वानर सम रामकृष्ण कृष्ण भक्ति विस्मृतात्म राधिकैव रामकृष्ण तोतापुरी विदित वेद शिरस्तत्व रामकृष्ण चिरसमाधि मेरुशिखर दृढस्थान रामकृष्ण साधन समये शिक्षितात्मगुरो रामकृष्ण प्रेस्तपूर्वचित्र धर्मचरण निरत सर्वधर्म समानत्व सत्यदर्शि रामकृष्ण एकवस्तु विविध नाम तत्त्वदर्शि रामकृष्ण स्वपत्न्यै विशुद्ध हर्ष बोधदातृ रामकृष्ण प्रयागादितीर्थनगर यटनशील रामकृष्ण तत्र दुःखि जनान्वीक्ष्य मोचिताश्रु रामकृष्ण स्वपत्न्यामपूर्वमात्र दृष्टिभर्त रामकृष्ण समाधिस्थ शारदा सुपूजितवन रामकृष्ण राम्य सभ्य केशवादि कर्षितवन रामकृष्ण भक्तसेवकागमं प्रतीक्षमाण रामकृष्ण साधुशिष्य भक्तवृन्द भृङ्गकमल रामकृष्ण साधुशिष्य भक्तहृदय कमलतरणि रामकृष्ण नरेन्द्रादि छात्रकोटि शिक्षमाण रामकृष्ण भक्तपापकर्षणात् विजयाग्रस्त रामकृष्ण रोगदुःख निर्विषण्ण मनोयुक्त रामकृष्ण महासमाधौ हि पर ब्रह्मलीन रामकृष्ण परब्रह्म पराशक्ति जगत् रूप रामकृष्ण धर्मरक्षणाय जगति देहधारी रामकृष्ण निर्विकार निराकार परब्रह्म रामकृष्ण जगत् सृष्टि कर्तु पात्र हन्तृ देव रामकृष्ण तैलवत्तिलेषु जगति अभिव्याप्त रामकृष्ण सर्वभूतहृदय देश बुद्धिसाक्षी रामकृष्ण साधकाद्यनुग्रहाय वपुर्धरसि रामकृष्ण सुन्दरतनुदीप्तवदन कृपादृष्टि रामकृष्ण सर्वकाल मन्दहास रुचिरवक्त्र रामकृष्ण सुमनसा छेदयोग्य मृदुशरीर शरीर रामकृष्ण वेदशास्त्र पुराणादि सारवेतृ रामकृष्ण सर्ववेदशास्त्र वा प्रमाणकर्तृ रामकृष्ण ज्ञानी जनो यस्य पदेर्भकायितो रामकृष्ण कुशलमते तीक्ष्णमना प्राज्ञकवे रामकृष्ण दीनबन्धु दया सिन्धु संश्रितगति रामकृष्ण अपरिशुद्ध गिरिशचन्द्र शरण पुत्र शोकतप्त मातृ शान्तिदायि रामकृष्ण कुष्ठरोगी घोरर्या विनाशयसि रामकृष्ण मृत्सुवर्णसमानत्व दर्शितवन रामकृष्ण सर्वदशा कनककाम वर्जितयति रामकृष्ण आमरणं प्रास्खलित ब्रह्मचर्य रामकृष्ण निखिलतमोशेषहन्तृ भासमान रामकृष्ण घनीभूत सत्यवयुन हर्षरूप रामकृष्ण प्रेमरूप पूर्णरूप शक्तिरूप रामकृष्ण सकल कुवासना बीज नाशकारी रामकृष्ण कलुषहरण मधुरधरण भवसुवेद्य रामकृष्ण सहज नित्य शुद्ध बुद्ध मुक्तरूप रामकृष्ण ज्ञान योग्य सिद्धिमचिर आप भवान् रामकृष्ण निर्विकल्प सिद्धिमाप्त राजयोगी रामकृष्ण देवनाम निशामगा शुश्रुविमुग रामकृष्ण लोकसंग्रहाय सतत कर्म निरत रामकृष्ण कृष्ण योग सिद्धि तुल्य पादधूलि रामकृष्ण योगगम्य योगिगम्य निखिल योगिपते योग सिद्धिदात्र रामकृष्ण परब्रह्म पराशक्ति जगत् रूप रामकृष्ण धर्मरक्षणाय जगति देहधारी रामकृष्ण प्रेक्षमहन्यदृष्टिमपि भवत्येव रामकृष्ण अज्ञगूढ ईश्वरोऽपि तथा भवति रामकृष्ण मायया पिहितत्वात् अवीक्षितस्तु रामकृष्ण हेमकामगणं कुमा येति वेद्मि रामकृष्ण तस्य बन्धुरहङ्कार इति ऋतो रामकृष्ण भक्तिहीन पण्डितस्तु गृध्रसमो रामकृष्ण साधिकार पुरुष एव गुरुर्भवेत् रामकृष्ण असति जगति मग्न जनो अमुक्त एव रामकृष्ण साधु संग नाम जपो मोक्ष करो रामकृष्ण मलिन वासना त्यजेधि साधन कृत रामकृष्ण सस्पृहस्य मुक्तिवचनमस्ति किं नु रामकृष्ण आत्मजयत्रीषु मातृभाव एव रामकृष्ण श्रद्धान इमां मुक्तिम् अचिरमाप रामकृष्ण ईश्वरे प्रपत्तिरस्ति सुलभपथो रामकृष्ण विना शुद्ध मलिन विवेकेन मृगो रामकृष्ण परानुरक्त ईश्वरे मुक्त एव रामकृष्ण ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति पथा विमुक्तिदा रामकृष्ण निर्गुणं च गुणयुतं च परब्रह्म रामकृष्ण ईश्वरोऽपि याचनाधि वृष्णिरभूद् रामकृष्ण हरेर्नाम गृहेयस्य भयं नास्ति रामकृष्ण परब्रह्म पराशक्ति नाय जगति देहधारी रामकृष्ण अनासाय मृत्युमेव यच्छ गुरो रामकृष्ण दैन्यशून्य जीवनं प्रयच्छ देव रामकृष्ण क्लेशरहितमेव मनो कुरुष्व रामकृष्ण सत्यपूतवचो मेस्तु मुखे सदा रामकृष्ण अहिंसा च रक्तगता भवतु हरे रामकृष्ण पुण्यपाप विवेकोऽपि भवेदेव रामकृष्ण ब्रह्मचर्य शक्तिरस्तु मे हि मनसि रामकृष्ण गृध्रवृद्धिरपि मदीय हृदि च मास्तु रामकृष्ण मतिं देहि बलं देहि पदे स्थलं रामकृष्ण शुद्ध भक्तिरपि तवास्तु पदाम्बुजे रामकृष्ण राम एव कृष्ण एव भवान् उभय रामकृष्ण ब्रह्मरूप शक्तिरूप परमहंस रामकृष्ण परब्रह्म पराशक्ति जगद्रूप रामकृष्ण धर्मरक्षणाय जगति देहधारी रामकृष्ण परब्रह्म पराशक्ति जगद्रूप रामकृष्ण धर्मरक्षणाय जगति देहधारी रामकृष्ण आनंददायका परमहंस आनंददायका परमहंस काली प्रिय गदाधर रामकृष्ण काली प्रिय गदाधर रामकृष्ण आनंददायका परमहंस आनंद आनन्ददायका परमहंसा कालीप्रिया गदाधरा रामकृष्ण कालीप्रिया गदाधरा रामकृष्ण धर्मस्वरूपा धर्मरक्षका धर्मस्वरूपा धर्मरक्षका शारदा मनोहरा शान्तिदायका शारदा मनोहरा शान्तिदायका आनन्ददायका परमहंसा आनन्ददायका परमहंसा कालीप्रिया गदाधरा रामकृष्ण कालीप्रिया गदाधरा रामकृष्ण कालीप्रिया गदाधरा रामकृष्ण 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 ब्रह्मानन्दं शिवं शान्तं प्रेमरूपं निरञ्जनं योगीशमद्भुतं नित्यम् अखण्डाद्वैतलक्षणम् विज्ञानं त्रिगुणातीतं तुरीयाभेदसंज्ञितं सुबोधं शारदंश्चैव विवेकशशिभूषणम् समन्वयमहाचार्यं युगधर्मस्वरूपिणं सर्वदेवस्वरूपं श्रीरामकृष्णं नमाम्यहम् सर्वदेवस्वरूपं श्रीरामकृष्णं नमाम्यहम् जय श्री रामकृष्ण देव की जय जय श्री शारदा देवी की जय जय श्री स्वामी विवेकानंद की जय जय श्री बुद्धदेव की जय जय श्री जीसस क्राइस्ट की जय। So let us say grace and proceed for the prasad supper. Om Brahmarpanam Brahmahvir Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmaivate Gantavyam Brahmakarma Samadhina Hari Om Tat Sat Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O Lord, please accept our offering, bless us, make us pure and all loving. Make we not accuse, demand or complain, but love, respect and cooperate with all. Make we not find faults with others, but try to find our own faults. Make we not treat others as strangers, but learn to make all our own. Make we feel the whole world to be our own. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.